Hey everybody, welcome to the show. This is Real Estate Investing 365. Today I got a guest on here, David Pere. He's in the Marine Corps, and let's start to get to know him. What's up, David?
What's up? Thanks for having me on the show, Justin.
Yeah, man, thanks for being here. So, real quick, while we get started, why don't you give us a little history about yourself, who you are, where you're from, what you like to do?
Yeah, so once again, appreciate you having me on the show. So David Pere, I currently run, some of you may have seen my website from Military to Millionaire, but I am in the Marine Corps. I have been since 2008. So I was coming out of high school, didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, and I was like, blowing stuff up and traveling the world sounds more fun than trying to get a degree in something I don't want to get a degree in, especially because I don't have money for school. And I didn't pay enough attention to get a scholarship, and I was not athletic. So I was kind of screwed. And so I joined the military, and I got just that. I traveled the world. I saw like 11 countries in the first 4 years. I lived in Japan, San Diego, Hawaii. Well, Hawaii was after, but Missouri, went to Afghanistan, did all kinds of cool stuff. And in 2015, I was a recruiter in Missouri, and someone handed me a book. They were trying to get me into Amway, and they handed me the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I was like, I don't read, man. Like, the typical like quote alpha male Marine Corps, like, I don't read books. I shoot guns, whatever. Like I just figure I sounded so ignorant to this guy. So he was like, okay, great. And he put the book down. He pulled out a CD, and he was like, put this in your car then when you're driving to work and back and listen to it. And I was like, no. He's like, dude, seriously, just listen to this or get lost. So I was like, all right. So I listened to the book, and unfortunately, Audible doesn't timestamp when you finish the book, but it was within 3 or 4 months of reading that. I had also read Brandon Turner's the book on rental property investing and bought a duplex. So I did an FHA loan because I let a lender talk me out of using the VA loan under really dumb reasons, which probably cost me about 10 grand now in fees and stuff, but which is why I'm a big advocate of the VA loan. So I bought this duplex, lived in one side, rented out the other side, and then I moved to Hawaii, and I kind of realized investing was fun, so I kept doing it. And after that, my wife had a house, so we rented that out as well. We bought another 5 acres next to that, which wasn't really an investment, but we found a way to make it work, make it cash flow a little bit through some. Basically, I call it cattle financing, but basically we let cows live on the land and then we make money off them. Bought a 10 unit. I've bought and sold or bought and lost a 40 unit. That's kind of a point of contention. I bought a 40 unit and then some things didn't go really well. So we're kind of in a legal dispute trying to sort all that out. But I have a 10 unit. And then right now I'm currently flipping a house. So if you count that one, then I have 14 units, but it's not really a rental. So 13 units and a house flip right now. And I'm just hanging out, living the life in San Diego right now.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. You've done a lot. So I'll rewind a little bit on what you said. So your first deal was a duplex, you said in Missouri, right?
Correct.
Okay, and you didn't do the VA loan. So
I did not.
for people who might not know, what is the difference between a VA loan and a regular loan?
Ooh, yeah. So the VA loan is for veterans. There's some criteria there. You have to have served for two years, and if you're in the reserves, you have to have done a full 6 years. But you have to have an honorable discharge, and this, that, and the other. You have to be active duty or reserves, military, and it allows you to purchase a house with zero down. So I can go buy in this case, it would have been $81,000 duplex with not a penny out of pocket, and it allows you to do zero down without having to pay what's called primary mortgage insurance, which is for my duplex is an extra $80 a month, which I'm paying because I didn't use a VA loan. So it's the only loan. Typically, when you go under 20% down on a house, you're required to pay. The lender will make you pay mortgage insurance to ensure that if you default on the loan, they're covered because you didn't put that much. You didn't make a big down payment. But the VA loan doesn't require that, so you don't have to pay that. And then there's just some cool stipulations with it. You can reuse it, so you have to intend to live in the property for a year. You can use it multiple times. The interest rates are usually better than other loans, despite having very low money down. There is a small funding fee that gets topped on top of the loan, but it doesn't equate anywhere near as much as the PMI would. And it's waived if you're more than 10% disabled, which is a nice benefit. So there's a lot of cool things that tie into the VA loan, but there's so many misconceptions. Like, people think you can only use it once, which is just not true. You can reuse it as many times as you want, as long as the lenders will lend to you, and as long as you're not buying a house and then 6 months later buying a house down the street. You got to be either refinance out of the VA loan, sell the home, or move more than 50 miles away. Like they're not wanting you to buy every house in the neighborhood with zero down just because you can use the VA loan. So
Right.
it's meant to be not for investing for primary residence, but you can buy up to 4 units. So you can buy a fourplex and live in it for free while the tenants pay the rest of your bills, which is why it's a good product.
Yeah.
I got burned because the lender convinced me that it wasn't worth wasting my VA loan on that product or on that house, but he didn't mention that I could just use the VA loan again later.
Right.
So I paid $3,800 down on the house that I didn't need to pay, and I paid an extra $80 a month that I didn't need to pay, and then I have an extra, two, not 2%, 0.2% interest rate over what I would have had. So that has added up as well. So it's probably an extra $100 a month that I pay on this property, not including the almost 4,000 that I paid when I bought the place. Just because I didn't know, and so that's why I like talking to people at the VA loan, because it's a cool opportunity.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's a tip for our listeners too, is that I'm sure maybe you only talked to one lender before you
That's
kind of
it.
got started, you know what I mean? And so there's tons of different lenders out there, and a lot of them, just like real estate agents, don't always seem to be on top of their game very much. So, make sure you talk to, you know this now, but several different lenders, and different ones will have different programs and point you in different directions. So, well, that's cool. Well, either way, it's still got going, and I'm sure it makes money and cash flow as well. So, that's good. So, what do you think the key factors were to you getting going? Because it sounds like you had no idea about real estate, and then somebody gave you Rich Dad Poor Dad CD. You listened to that, and before no time you bought your first property. So what was the key factors in that? Like, how did you just do it right away without even having any experience?
So I tell people, and I just made a shirt that says this. So my buddy Jay Helms has a shirt that has like his mantra across the front. I
Mm-hmm.
kind of copied his style and did a 3 word or three statement. So I made a shirt that says "Learn, network, and take action," although it's not here in the mail yet. And that's really what it boils down to: is learning. So podcasts, books, and just even if it's just like I would listen to a podcast or I would listen to a book because I would do it on Audible. And then if I had questions about something, I'd jot it down, and then I'd get back to the office and I would sit at Google and go, what does this mean? What is this? How do
Yeah.
I avoid this? And then and Bigger Pockets popped up all the time, which is how I got on the Bigger Pockets. But I would learn that way. I would just listen to a book, and whatever I didn't understand, I would watch a YouTube video about or Google. And then I would network, except that I didn't do that piece at all. I didn't know the first thing about that. So that is now. Now going back, I would say network. At the time, I just totally omitted that because I didn't know anyone who knew anything about real estate. And then I did the take action piece, which probably should have networked and learned more beforehand. But I basically, like, my biggest takeaway from those 2 books, Rental Property Investing and Rich Dad Poor Dad, was, some people will talk about this their entire life and never do it.
Totally.
And that, if you know that you can survive the worst case scenario, then you should go for it. They were like, it's not going to be your best deal, but you'll learn from it. And I was like, screw it. I was 20, I might have been 26, 25 or 26, Marine. So, we're kind of hard headed and decisive anyway. So it was pretty easy for me to say, I'm going to do this. And then it was pretty easy for me to say, you know, hold on, let's see what happens. Probably easier than some, just because I've always been a pretty like, we'll figure it out type of guy. Um, I jumped in and it worked out. And then as soon as that one worked out, and it's definitely not my best deal, but it still makes $200 or $300 a month every month consistently. It's paid because I only paid like $3,800 down. It is almost paid for or completely paid for the mortgage or my down payment every year I've owned it since then. Um, so it's been 100% return on what I put down on it, and it's definitely not my best deal. So there's other great ones out there, and I learned a ton from that. And the biggest thing you get out of that is when you take action, you just see things start falling in place, and then it's like everything you were learning is now affirmed, and you can go do it again. So
Right. Yeah. Well, so that sounds great. And I'm sure since you just jumped in it, there was some mistakes that you probably made. And you already touched on one mistake, which was obviously not using the VA loan. But maybe is there a big mistake or main mistake that sticks out that you could tell the listeners about that maybe they can avoid?
So this one's not big, but I MLS'd it. I didn't even look at off market deals at all. So I could have probably found a better deal pretty much anywhere. It wasn't a bad deal, but the big one I would say was the team. I did not set up a team ahead of time. So the way I found a real estate agent was I was messaging people like straight on Trulia, Zillow, Realtor. I like Realtor better than the other two, but uh, I would message the selling agent, the listing agent, and I'd basically just whichever one got back to me, the fastest and would get me information the most. That's the one I ended up using as my buyer's agent. So I was like, hey, I like you. You want to help me look at some other places? And, oh yeah, which was okay, but they weren't that good. I haven't used them again. So and then I had no tax person or CPA. I set up my own LLC via like Googling things and copy pasting out of stuff. And so far it's worked, but I probably should have used a lawyer for that. I didn't have a tax professional to help me out on anything. I clearly didn't have a good lender, and I did not have property management at all, which that was probably the biggest one. So not that not having a property manager is a bad thing. You can easily manage on your own, but for like stress levels when you have a full-time job, living next door to your tenant when you own the place, it's like anything, right? When you were a kid, you didn't really care about your dad's car. If they gave you a car, you're like, cool, I'll drive this thing like a bat out of hell and I'll beat it up. And then you buy your own car and you're like, ooh, I got to take care of this. So I'm living in this duplex and I'm taking care of my side of the duplex, and my tenant on the other side looks like, oh,
Joe
what's
Dirt.
the Joe? Yeah, there we go. It looks like Joe Dirt. That's exactly it. Look at that. Great minds think alike. And they've got like at one point they had the little patio out front. They had built this like construction thing above it and wrapped it in a blue tarp to like enclose their little porch so that I couldn't look in it.
Oh
And
man,
it was just this blue tarp and like trash. And as the owner, I'm like, oh, what are you doing? And it was just terrible.
did
And
they
so when
know?
I
Did they know you were the owner?
They did, which is also a mistake. I will never again tell a tenant that I know that I own the place, even if I live in the room next to him. I will forever, ever, ever just say, "Man, this property manager, it does suck. I have the same issues you
Yeah.
have. Oh, what a terrible tenant I must be." Because if they don't know that, they leave you alone. Because once I left, they still had ways to contact me because I knew who I was, and so they would bug me when stuff went wrong with the property manager. I finally hired a property manager, but until that tenant left, I was still dealing with issues with the property because the property manager, like they had my number.
Right.
But once I had a property manager in place, for one, I no longer felt like I cared what the place looked like because all of a sudden I only spent a couple minutes to an hour a month working on the property, and that was just bookkeeping. And for two, I was less stressed and no one bugged me at all. So I went from dealing with people and dealing with the property to basically having a system where I could just live my life in Hawaii and get a check every month, that's much more the difference between the guy who's the new guy and the guy who is getting some income. So it's a much better feeling, at least in my opinion, to just get a check and only know when things go wrong. I
Yeah.
don't have to worry about any petty details.
That mailbox money. Yeah. So a couple of things that I see there in your story of mistakes, which
Mm,
we can look back and say they were mistakes, but if you would have never made them, then you wouldn't have got the deal and you wouldn't have got started in real estate maybe. But one thing mentioned was MLS. So for those who don't know, the MLS is the multiple listing service, right? And that's what the realtors like when a house is gonna if a seller wants to sell a house and they go to a realtor and the realtor says, okay, we'll put your house in the market, they put it on the MLS and then that's where it goes out to like Zillow and Realtor and all that stuff, and everybody has access to it, right?
everybody.
As opposed to off market deals, which you mentioned too, which are maybe you directly contact the seller themselves and then you can work a deal personally with the sellers.
Hmm.
So then what was the next thing I was going to say?
I don't
Oh,
know.
and then the property manager. I'm sorry,
Oh yeah,
property manager, right? So you tried to manage the deal yourself, but that really didn't work out very well. You should have just got a property manager to begin with, and then it's less personable, right? It's less like you care about the property less. You're not. It's not like your own home. You can kind of go through them. The other tenants don't know who you are, and then they bug you less, right?
exactly.
Okay. Cool. Well, let's jump ahead real quick. And so, where are you now? So, you mentioned now you have you said you have a 41 unit deal that you're in litigation on, but
Yeah.
also besides that, you have a 11 unit deal, right?
Yeah, 10. Yeah, so I have a 40 unit and a 10 unit.
Oh, okay.
And
So,
then yeah, those are the only cool ones.
what kind of I guess let's talk about the 10 unit, huh? So the 10 unit, where's that located at?
Springfield, Missouri.
Springfield, Missouri. That's in the same area as your duplex, kind of.
Yeah, most of them are in that town. It's not a fancy town. It's not a flashy town, but it's somewhere that I'm familiar with.
Okay, so when you when you're looking for these deals, do you now just use brokers, or are you doing direct to sellers, or how are you finding your deals?
So the 10 unit was a direct mail. So I pulled a list from listsource.com of homeowners that absentee homeowners. So they own the property, but they don't live in it. It's all tax data. And then I sent handwritten letters to all of them. And someone reached out and said, hey, I have this duplex for sale, but I don't want to sell it to you. However, I have a 10 unit for sale and I would be interested in talking about, selling that one. And so we started talking, negotiating, and this, that, and the other. And that's how I found that one. And then the big one was found through Craigslist. So that was off market. And then I found another one through a wholesaler, which was technically off market. So someone who, they specialize in finding deals. And then I found, yeah, I think that was the last one I bought on the MLS so far. There are good deals still on the MLS out there, so I will probably buy something off the MLS again in the future, but we'll see.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I actually just put an offer on some properties on the MLS because, if you find them, just because a lot of people say there's no deals out there right now, well, you still got to keep looking, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Um, so how did you fund these deals? Did you, let's say the 10 unit deal, you got that directly from the owner. Did you do owner financing on that, or did you get financing through a bank?
Yes and yes. I
Okay.
did a commercial loan. We were supposed to get 80% loan to value from the commercial lender and then 20% from me. However, 10% was going to come down from the seller. So it was going to be 80% from the bank, 10% from me, and then 10% from the seller. We agreed to 4% interest for, I think it was like 5 years. And so it was a pretty good deal. Nothing crazy. I was going to pay the seller financing, and that was going to be that. And then through some, it's kind of a weird, man, you can see the light on my face, my blinds, but so the property needed some repairs and we negotiated back and forth on the repairs. And what happened with it was that instead of them wanting to fix it beforehand or credit the money back to me, they just dropped the price on the property, and which really is not the ideal way to do it usually, except that I guess their agent and my agent just like forgot to mention that to the bank. So the amount they dropped the price, the bank didn't know about it, so they brought the original check amount. So when we got to closing, they showed up with enough money. They were basically like, well, you can either run to the bank and get a smaller check, or we can go back and redo all this with the loan and it'll take another week. And I was like, well, I will go get a smaller check. You want less money from me? Great. So it ended up being like 4.9% down from me, and then 10% from the seller and 85% from the bank. So I bought a 10 unit property for it was like 10,000 and some change. And then it's Missouri. It's not a very expensive market, so it's 212 and a half purchase price. It appraised for 249. We got it for 212. It's probably worth probably up around 300, 320 now, but got it for 10,000, and it cash flows somewhere between $1,000 and $1,200 a month. So
That's
it
sweet.
again paid for itself every year.
Is it a one single building with just like 10 separate apartments, or is it separate buildings, separate units, separate
Yeah,
apartments?
it's just one old Class C-ish, so kind of not a terrible neighborhood, not a terrible area of town, not a terrible building, but it's not nice by any means. And it's just 10, it's 9 one-bedroom and 1 two-bedroom right down the middle, just like an old, flat
Yeah.
building, with a little parking structure behind it that's really just an old piece of metal that I don't know how it's standing up as an awning.
Okay.
I need to pull that thing down, but
You have a property manager for that one, I assume.
yep. Yep. And we also have in that one we have a washer dryer, so we get about 40 to 60 bucks a month through washer dryer money. And then I also have, yeah, that's pretty much about it. So
Which is cool because, if for some of those that don't know, commercial properties are valued differently than residential properties. So if you have a residential house, just so the listeners out there know, if you have a residential house, their value is based on comps in the area, what other houses like theirs are selling for. But commercial property, like your 10 unit here, is valued based on, one, the quality of the property, but two, it's based on how much income it brings in. So for you having the washer and dryers, the reason you mentioned that, I assume, is because that increases your net operating income, which therefore in turn raises the value of the property. So that's pretty cool. That's the type of deals I like to do. Get some commercial property, and then you can raise income and then raise the value of your property very quickly, right?
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, right on. Well, that's pretty neat. So, do you have criteria for your deals that you're looking for? Like, do you try to meet like what they call the 1% rule, or do you have a cash on cash return criteria or anything like that?
I actually, in my market, I got to hit like the 1.2% rule. So the market's so affordable that I should be able to get, for those of you who don't know, I should be able to get 1.2%. But the rent that I get should equal 1.2% of whatever the purchase price is, so the monthly rent. So I should be able to get like $1,200 a month in gross income from a $100,000 property in my market. Some markets it's better, some markets it's worse, but that's about that. I mean, and that's not really like I don't. For those listening, that's a rule of thumb, but that rule of thumb, and I think this is misunderstood sometimes. That rule of thumb is designed for you to screen and weed out deals. It's not designed as a purchasing criteria. So I trying to figure out, I'm going to come up with a great analogy for how to say this, but basically like if you're going up a mountain, right? Like that rule of thumb, anything below that failed the race type thing. So don't even touch it. Everything above it is still in the foot race to get to the top of this mountain, but it doesn't mean they're going to win the dang race. So just know that, because I had someone call me out on that the other day, and I was like, well, you're misunderstanding it. Like,
Yeah.
basically saying you're saving time by not analyzing deals that don't even come close, because anything that's not renting for 1% of what it is worth is probably not going to cash flow very much. It's probably not worth the headaches it'll bring. So I use that to weed them out, and then I like to get about $100 a door after all of my expenses, and I know that's a really low number. Realistically, I get 150 a door is probably the worst that I get, 120. But I say 100 doors good because I've never paid more than 6% down on a property. So I'm
Yeah.
paying so little out of pocket for some of these properties that $100 a door means I'm getting all my money back in the first year, and then it's all profit from them. So, and then that's the biggest thing for me is it's got to cash flow at least $100 a door, because if it doesn't, then if the market tanks, you're going to be stuck trying to fork the mortgage payment out on your own, and that's not a good spot to be in when you can't sell the building and you can't maintain the mortgage payment.
Yeah. And so cash flow is not just the difference between what your payments are and what you bring in. Cash flow is, you have your mortgage, your taxes, your insurance, your property manager. You set aside money for capital expenses. You set aside money for um, all different kinds of things. And after you pay all those bills and set money aside for expenses and repairs and improvements, that number is your cash flow. So um, I know there's a lot of people that kind of get confused on that and say, "Oh, I rent it for 1,000 and my mortgage is 800. Sweet, this is gonna make money." Well, it might not make that much money because what if that roof goes out or that water heater goes bad? You know what I mean? So I like that you set aside for all those factors for sure.
Yeah.
So, David, where are you headed? What's your plan? Do you want to continue to get more units, staying commercial? Or are you going to go to a different category, or what's your plan and your 5-year goal?
Ooh, 5-year goal. That's a good one, which we're going to have to dig into more on our call on Monday, because that vision piece is kind of a struggle for me. Um, Ideally, in 2 years, I'll be exiting the military and going into the reserves. And by that time, I will have replaced my income through a mix of the online community that I'm building, through selling services, helping other service members and military veterans. But the majority of that being real estate income. And primarily that'll be done, I think, through small multifamilies. So like the probably not 5 unit, but maybe like 5 unit to 25 unit, where the big syndication players aren't really hunting smaller deals like that. but they're still a little bit out of the price range for newer investors. So it's a small amount of competition in that area. I like big syndications, like really big apartment complexes, but that's not necessarily my niche. I think I'd prefer to be like a limited investor in that and not be the one having to source the deals. And I really like the BRRRR strategy, the idea of buying a junker house and then fixing it up and then renovating it and renting it out and pulling all your money back out via a refinance and doing it again. I just haven't found a deal where the numbers were right for that, where let me rephrase. I haven't found a deal where the numbers were right for that at the same time that I had the capital to do it, because you need to purchase the property in cash. So like I'll find the house, but then I'll have already invested the money here. And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
I guess I can flip this house. And then, it's just been kind of a game with the money's here. Now I find the right one. Oh, now I have the money, but I can't find the right one. So
Yeah.
I haven't gotten to successfully BRRRR yet. Or this house that I just recently bought, and that was the plan, was to BRRRR it, but there's just been a lot more expenses than I thought. So I think it'll probably be better to just flip this one, take a little bit of profit, and move on to the next, because I'm not going to be able to refinance all the way out and get all my money back out to reinvest. So
And then still have it cash flow after you rent it out with the higher
yeah,
mortgage payment.
exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's cool. Well, that's exciting. Two more years in the Marine Corps, and you could just live the retired life, really, if you wanted to. But I'm sure you're not that type of guy. You're gonna continue to go up and up.
Yeah, we shall see what happens. Yeah, the idea. I think a lot of people struggle with that, right? They reach the retirement and then they go, crazy because they don't do anything. They sit on their hands. And so yeah, I fully intend to continue hustling and networking and investing and keeping myself busy through hobbies and you would say work, but for myself.
Yeah, and it'll be fun, and hopefully the goal is to find something that you can do and enjoy it instead of having those days where you just hate life. I'm sure. And
Exactly.
I don't think we mentioned you're only what are you, 31 years old?
29.
Oh, you're 29 years old. I
Yeah,
got
the
that wrong.
31 was
Sorry.
my projection for when I'm out of the
Oh,
military.
okay, 29, man.
I know I
Well,
don't look
see,
it.
so this can happen very quickly for these people listening out there, like you can come from not having any real estate experience to just a couple years ago, you bought your first place and now you have, several units and you're almost covering your monthly income needs. So that's pretty exciting. So, David, a couple things on the before we get out of here. Resources, so what's your favorite resource as far as how do you like to learn and consume knowledge about real estate investing? It could be podcasts, books, seminars, any sort of thing. What's your favorite way, your go-to way to learn more about real estate?
I recommend there's a couple really good podcasts out there that are definitely worth checking out. And I like podcasts because you can listen to a short 30 minute to an hour podcast on the drive to work or while you're at the gym and not feel like you have to stop it in the middle and restart it. However, my favorite is probably Audible. I like the books on tape, and I'm one of those weirdos where the book on tape is set at like 2 times listening speed, so it sounds like a chipmunk to everyone else in the car. In fact, sometimes when I'm driving, like when I'm driving somewhere for like a training or something with the military, and I happen to be in my car, other service members, like younger service members, will be in the vehicle with me, and I'm like, hey, look, you want to ride with me and save gas? That's fine, but you gotta just let me listen to my book because we're commuting. And they will make fun of me because they're like, what are you listening to? I'm like, hey, I know what it's saying, so you just be quiet and let me relax. But I like Audible because you can target a book. What I'll do is I'll listen to a book, and then if it's really, really, really impactful, I will then buy the hard copy and I'll read it and highlight it. And then if it's still really impactful, I'll read just the highlighted portions a third time. But that's like my way of helping ensure that I retain the information. Like I just finished a book called Pitch Anything, which was recommended in our mastermind for the framing piece. And I will probably buy the hard copy of that because it was a good book.
Okay, wow, that's a good idea. I haven't never thought about that. Listening to it, then reading it, highlighting, and then just reading the highlighted stuff. I'm gonna take that tip myself. So, do you have a favorite app? Just one app that you use that just makes life easier, or something? I mean, it could be Tinder. I don't care what it is, but a favorite app that
You
some
need
people could get out there and use.
we need to make the Tinder of real estate where it's the MLS and you just swipe.
Swipe, maybe. I'm sure Zillow is working on that.
Plug in your criteria and ooh, cute house, ugly house, cute house, butt a face. I don't know. Anyway, so so unprofessional. Okay, so I'm going to say an app just because I know no one else is going to say it. It's not like some super life-changing app, but I love it. The app is called ICBA, which is India Charlie Bravo Alpha, just the letters. And I know it stands for something, but I don't remember or care what it stands for. But basically, it's an app where when you download it, you open it up, and it's just like a little box. And it says zip code. You type in the zip code, hit go or search or whatever, and it populates a list of portfolio lenders around that zip code. And so a portfolio lender is a bank that is not selling the loan to Freddie Mac or Fannie Mae or whatever. They hold the loan decision in house. So it's someone who, if you go to say Wells Fargo and you want to do some crazy lending type of thing that's not the normal way loans are made, they're going to laugh at you. And then if you're like, well, who do I need to see to make this happen? They'll have you go to a manager, and then they're going to laugh at you, and then they're going to say, sorry, this is not the way corporate approves loans, because the decision maker for that loan is not in-house. It's someone way above their pay schedule, and they're never going to call that guy to bug him. Portfolio lender, they're more local usually. The decision maker is in-house. And so you can go, so if like this one bank that allowed me to go, they normally don't lend over 80% of the money, but they lent 85.1 or whatever on this deal because they realized they messed up, and the guy just picked up the phone, called the guy who has the decision-making power in the bank, and he was like, yeah, do it. And so you can actually network with the guy who says yes or no to loans, which means you can get a little bit more leeway because, as with anything, real estate is a people business. And if you are able to network and build rapport and trust with the person who makes decisions on a loan, he's probably going to trust you with a little bit more money than they would normally lend. So I like that app because it'll help you source, some of those portfolio lenders, and then you just pick up the phone, make some phone calls, and theoretically get some better loan products than you would just going to the big banks.
Yeah, I had never even heard of that. That's freaking awesome because I have a list of like 25 banks in my market that I focus on, and I had to call probably 40 or 50 of them to get, this right banks that do portfolio loans. A lot of them won't even do portfolio loans. So great tip. I like that one. So what's your best advice that you can give to somebody just getting started in real estate? Just one piece of advice, the best one. What would that be?
Well, I'm going to be cliche and say learn, network, take action. The best piece of advice that I could give you, although all the learning part is really important, is get around people that are already doing it. And I'm not going to advocate that you do what everyone does to me and to all these other investors where they say, ooh, I'm starting real estate and I need a mentor and you're the one. I want you to be my mentor. Come help me out. No. Go to a meetup, play the Nick the new guy card and be the new guy and be honest about your experience level and just be there to genuinely talk to people, ask questions, get to know people, and not in a needy way, but in a like, hey, I'm the new guy and I know that, but I'm here to learn. I'm serious about this. And then figure out as you network with these people what it is they need and what it is that you might be able to help with, because it's not always real estate skills that will get you into the deal. It could be something else. So if you have money and have no idea what you're doing, maybe you find someone who's good at it and you jump in with them. If you maybe you're for me right now, so let's say you were trying to network with me. I'm going to plug this because someone might hit me up. If you're
Yeah.
trying to network with me and right now you said, I'm a hell of a video editor and I can run all of your YouTube editing and I won't charge you a penny if you will let me pick your brain about real estate, I would be like, yep, absolutely. How much do you like? Let's set up a call once a week for 30 minutes or something,
Yeah.
because that saves me a ton of time on editing. But people would rather ask you to share all of your secrets and knowledge that you've gained and say like, come on, you're missing a chance to help me. I'm going to be great. Than just say, hey, how can I help you? And not asking, how can I help you? But saying, hey, I noticed you need this. Here's what I can do for you, which
Right.
is the way that you get in with someone. So network, network, network.
Yep. Networking. Don't be afraid to not know anything. Right.
Yeah,
I'd imagine.
we were all there at some point.
That's it. I was going to ask this earlier, but I kind of skimmed over it. I have a lot of friends and family in the military, and I know several of them that want to get into real estate investing, but they always feel like they can't really get in because they're in the military and they're always transferring duty stations and things like that. So, what is a piece of advice for specifically military members, active duty military members, to get started in real estate?
One would be the VA loan house hack. So you can buy, and I'm not going to say you should do this at every duty station. The numbers have to work. If you go to a market where you know that you can rent one of the units, or if you could buy a fourplex and rent 3 of the units out and cover your rent. You can buy that house for 0 down with the VA loan, then do it. And I would say, especially like for young, this kills me when I see people not do this. If you're a young officer, young lieutenant, and you already get a housing allowance, that's a huge advantage. So if there's 3 or 4 lieutenants in a unit that they're not married and they all have a housing allowance, they should pitch in and either buy a house, or if you're the smart one, you should buy a house and have all your lieutenant buddies rent rooms from you. And now they're saving money on their housing allowance, and you're banking off all of them paying for your mortgage. So there's some pretty cool strategies with ways to house hack that. The other thing I would say is use the fact that you move a lot to your advantage. Don't use it as a crutch, because you might be in a really crappy market and now you get moved to a good market. Sure, it might go the other way around, but if you were in a good market and you built a team and you get moved to a crappy market, you can keep investing in the good market. And so use the fact that you travel as a method to force you to make systems to make you more efficient. It'll make you a better investor.
Sweet. Yeah, those are great tips. I think you can use that tip too on the fourplex and having roommates. You can use that on outside the military as well, right?
Yes.
You can buy a place, live in one of 4 units with a primary loan, and you can almost live for free. So anyways, last question here is influencer. So there's tons of influencers out there, and there's a lot of good ones and there's a lot of bad ones. So is there an influencer that you like to follow, some person out there that's like real motivating, or that you take advice from, that maybe somebody can look after and kind of listen to what they have to say?
Yeah, there's a lot of them. There's some really good ones out there, but I'm going to throw out a somewhat cliche one, and that's the Instagram for @BeardyBrandon, which is Brandon Turner for Bigger Pockets. He's grown a lot on Instagram in the last few years, but now he's doing a lot more video clips. He's doing tips once or twice a week. He's just a very generous guy. He gives a ton of knowledge out on Instagram. So I really like following his, and I'm not just saying that because he's meant a lot to me, and helped me out a lot in life, but it's a good account.
Yeah, definitely. I follow him and I love following him. He's a guy I look after also. So that's a great example. Well, David, thanks for being on the show. Where can people find out more about you? Give yourself some plugs. I know you have a podcast and a website, and you're doing big things in life. So tell them where to go. Tell them how to get connected.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So in theory, I don't know if this is quite there yet, but in theory, you could go to Google and you could type military millionaire and everything will pop up, or not. But if it does, great. If not, you go to www.frommilitarytomillionaire, all one word.com. And I've got, the Military Millionaire podcast. I have a YouTube channel, got a Facebook group. I have a cell phone. You're not getting my number. But no, so I'm out there, and I would love to chat with you and help you out. Provided you're not just coming to me and asking me for my life secrets without, at least getting to know me first.
Right on. Well, cool, David. Everything we talked about in the show today, I will link to in the show notes, especially that Beardy Brandon. I really like to follow him, and Military to Millionaire podcast. So, David, thanks again for being on the show. Really appreciate it. And take care, buddy. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, brother. Have a great night.
All right, you too.